Hello everyone. Hope you all had a less than manic Monday. As for my Monday, it was not too bad, and being that it is Monday means time for spooky places. This week we shall visit 3 places, starting with the Butler Cemetery in Westland, Michigan. The Butler Cemetery is located outside of Westland in a long Henry Rough road. It is deserted and abandoned spot, and if the stories of the local folk are to be believed, a very haunted one. The cemetery is neglected and in poor condition, overgrown with weeds and choked with grass and fallen tree limbs. A wire fence that runs around it is grown over with vines, and rusty gate is broken at the entrance. There are no structures nearby, save for a deserted house, so it is easy to imagine why this cemetery has gotten such a reputation as a haunted place. Are the stories here simply imagination at work or something supernatural? A witness reported a few years ago that he encountered a woman in white crossing the road in front of the cemetery. He swerved to avoid her, and she vanished right in front of his eyes. A year later, he saw this woman again. This time, she was in the graveyard itself. He claimed to see her standing next to a tall monument. Nearby was another apparition. This ghost was that of a man wearing some sort of uniform. He stopped his car for a closer look, and the 2 figures faded away. Thinking that someone might be playing a trick on him, he quickly searched the area for either people or automobiles, but found nothing. It does not say whether or not he checked the monument tombstone to see whose names were on there. So if you're ever in the neighborhood. The next stop is the Reynolds Cemetery in Jackson, Michigan. At a time between dusk on November 21st and dawn on November 22nd, the ghosts of a father and daughter are said to reunite in this secluded cemetery outside of Jackson, Michigan. The 2 spirits were the victims of a heinous crime that took place many years ago, a crime that remains unsolved to this day. The strange series of events began on November 21st, 1883 in the small community of Jackson. Horrible mass murder took place here, claiming 7 victims and creating a mystery and a haunting. The victims were Jacob Crotch, his daughter Eunice White was in her 9th month of pregnancy, and Eunice's husband, and a man named Moses Polly, who had been visiting the unborn child, who had been visiting the Crouch family out of town. These 4 people, 5 including the unborn child, sorry about that, were all shot to death while sleeping. The crime was carried out during a terrible thunderstorm that muffled the sounds of violence from nearby farms. 2 months later, on January 2nd, the naked body of Susan Halcombe, Jacob's surviving daughter, was found on the floor of her bedroom. She had been force-fed poison and had died. James Fay, who had worked as a farmhand for Jacob Crotch, was also found dead shortly after. What could these people have done, seen, or heard that would have committed them to their horrible deaths? No one knows. In the years that followed the murder, several men were brought to trial for the crimes, but no one was ever convicted. What really happened was never been known, and never will be known. As for all the principals and investigators in the case have long since carried the tales to the grave. Jacob Crotch was buried in a small cemetery at the corner of Horton and Reynolds Road, a mile away from the site of the Crotch home. Eunice and her husband lie 5 miles away in St. John's Cemetery in Jackson. The 2 burial grounds are very different. Jacob's grave is neglected and forgotten, while Eunice's lies in a well-cared cemetery that is still in operation today. Legend began many years ago that on the anniversary of the murders, Eunice's spirit would leave her grave and travel to Reynolds Cemetery, where it would reunite the ghost of her father. Many claim to have witnessed this over the years, including 2 ghost researchers in 1989, who insist they saw an ectoplasmic cloud appear in the cemetery that night. The glowing mist floated through the cemetery until it reached Jacob's grave, where it suddenly vanished. And our last stop for tonight, ruins of Au-Sable near Oscoda, Michigan. The city of Oscoda, Michigan lies just south of Saginaw Bay on the eastern side of the state. It looks out over the waters of Lake Huron and has deep ties to the past. Nearby are many legends of death and spirits. Among those are the stories of Lake Solitude. This lake was once connected to Lake Huron, but now only a narrow creek allows the water to join. Many believe that the passage was closed by the sinking of the Griffin, a ship of the explorer LaSalle, which sank there centuries ago. The ship is said to still be hidden beneath the lake, and the ghosts of the ship's crew are still haunting the nearby shores. Also nearby are the ruins of Au-Sable, the region's oldest settlement. It burned down in 1911, and many believe it is to be a very haunted spot. The energies there are said to be so high that local witchcraft practitioners hold their secret ceremonies in the ruins. Although tradition holds that many ghosts still walk there, there is one that is said to be the resident spirit. The best accounting of the ghost took place in 1979 when a group of local hunters came to a cabin in the nearby woods for a weekend of hunting. One of the hunters got lost and wandered away. The others became quickly disoriented in the heavy forest. He spent several hours wandering and searching for signs of civilization before, exhausted and hungry, he sat down to rest. He heard the crackling of underbrush, and a young woman walked out of the forest. She asked what he was doing there, and after he explained, she offered to lead him to safety. She told him that her father owned a farm nearby, and she knew the woods quite well. Before long, they had reached the road. The hunter knew his way back to the cabin, and he thanked the young woman profusely. She smiled at him and vanished. Needless to say, the hunter was stunned, and when he told his friends about it, they at first scoffed, but then were convinced by his shock and sincerity. They packed up their belongings and started for home, stopping at a local restaurant for dinner, and to phone their wives to tell them that they were on their way home. They had a beer at the bar, and the hunter told of his experience with the young woman to the bartender. He was not surprised by the tale at all. He had heard it before. The young woman's name is Leona, and her family had once had a farm in those woods. Back in 1929, Leona had been shot and killed by a hunter who mistook her for a deer. Since then, her spirit had been seen many times, usually leading lost people out of the forest. The small town of Oscoda is north of Saginaw Bay and is located on the west central side of the state. The ruins of Au-Sable can be found inland from the village. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the tales for this week, my friends. Wishing you all a spooky night.